Now, it was only when I was in college that I began to think about America. In other words, think about why America is this way. And I began to think about it in part through just little anecdotes that would illuminate for me what today scholars and historians call American exceptionalism, things that make America unique. And I began to sort of study those. I experienced them in very small ways. My mom came to visit many years ago. We were driving along the highway. I believe it was Highway 1 in California. And my mom just saw a sign on the side of the highway, "Adopt a highway." My mom was like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Mom, that's Adopt a Highway." And she's like, "Yeah, I know, but who adopts a highway?" And I'm like, "Well, you know, it's the Rotary Club, it's the Kiwanis group, it's some civic group that takes the responsibility for cleaning the highway, picking up the trash and so on." And I just realized how, looking at my mom's face, she was just thinking to herself, literally, of the billion or so people in India, there's probably not one who would think, "I think I better adopt a highway." It just wouldn't occur to them to do it, or to even contemplate it. So right there you have, in a very tiny way, this sense of civic engagement. You see it here tonight. Tocqueville saw it in the 1820s. This engagement with society, very distinctively American. In the 1980s, I became a young Reaganite, because to me, Reagan represented this kind of big sky conservatism that I really admired. And of course, Reagan's style was jocular, combative, but also collegial. I remember in 1982, I was a junior in college. The country had dipped into a recession. And Sam Donaldson, of ABC News, you might remember him, kind of corners Reagan. He goes, "Mr. President, in your speech about the recession, you have blamed the Democrats, and you have blamed the economists, and you have blamed the media." He goes, "Does any of the blame belong to you?" And Reagan goes, "Well, yes, because for many years I was a Democrat." It was a kinder, gentler America. And for me, it gave me an idea of America. And think about it, I mean, I worked in the Reagan White House. So I thought I had a really good grip on American politics. And it was only later, in retrospect, that I saw this perception as almost childishly naive. My perception was that American politics was a kind of a debate in which you had two camps that stood for rival principles, but nevertheless the principles on both sides were basically good. And so, for example, the Republicans believe in freedom and the Democrats believe in justice. Both are important. And the Republicans believe in equality of opportunity, but the Democrats believe in sort of equality of outcomes, ultimately everyone really having the same type of chance. And I thought, look, isn't this cool? You've got these two sides, they argue it out, they put these rival visions before the American people, and the American people decide, we want to go this way, or we want to go that way. And I also had the view that by and large in America, people agree on goals, but disagree on means. Which means that if you were to say to Americans a generation ago, hey, don't you think America should be prosperous? Yes. Don't you think America should be strong? Yes. Don't you think America should be an example to the world? Yes. Don't you think American influence should be projected for good in the world? Yes. Don't you think that we need strong, stable communities? Yes. Don't you think that we need law and order? Yes. So there's an agreement about where we want to go. We might disagree about how the prosperous pie should be carved up. Who gets what piece of a smaller or bigger slice? How do you achieve social justice? But there's an agreement on the destination. And that's why when people would say things like, I really wish the two parties would get together and work it out. It was based on the idea that the disagreement is over means and not ends. Fast forward now, several years, and here I am standing in a courtroom, and I hear the following phrase: United States of America versus Dinesh D'Souza. And, you know, as an immigrant, this sends a kind of chill down your spine, because you begin to realize the formidable resources on the other side. And then, when you begin to encounter the other side, you begin to realize right away that the kind of things that you think about, like, did I violate the campaign finance law? Yeah. Maybe out of goodwill, desire to help a friend, I did. I gave $20,000 over the limit. So then I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm basically going to get the same penalty as everyone else who does the same offense. And it takes me only a little while to realize that not only is that not the case, but the people on the other side don't see it this way at all. They have no interest in asking questions like, what motivated him to do it? Is he a first-time offender? Do we want a penalty proportionate to the crime? What did other people get? They don't care about any of this. This is their approach. This man, Dinesh D'Souza, is our political enemy. How can we take him out? In other words, we would like to lock him up, ideally for life, but can we get 20 years? Do you think we can convince a judge to give him 20 years? No, probably not. 20 grand, first-time offense, no corruption. What about 5 years? Can we get him for 5 years? And so you begin to realize suddenly that you are up against people who don't see you as a fellow citizen. Their goal is to destroy your life. And they set about that with a certain purposeful intensity. Then you realize that when you look around, the kind of people that you thought were your friends, and at that time, coming out of Washington, D.C., coming out of conservative think tanks like AEI and the Hoover Institution, I had friends at the Brookings Institution, the Washington Post, and these are guys I considered my friends. I would go to their house for dinner, I would meet them at restaurants, and they would come up to me during my case and go, Dinesh, man, you're really getting shafted, man. That really sucks. I really feel for you, man. And I would say, hey, so-and-so, you're at the Washington Post. I've got some conservatives who are defending me. Megyn Kelly's defending me on Fox News. But it would be really nice to have someone on the liberal side at the Post say nothing different than what you're saying to me right now. And then I realized, no way. No way can I count on this guy. It doesn't matter how much we have in common before. It is of no consequence in the foxhole. So in other words, I basically began to realize that I needed new kinds of friends. And I also began to realize that certain virtues that I had admired as paramount need to take second place to other types of virtues that are actually more important in life. And so I used to admire as a primary virtue, and this goes all the way back to Plato, the idea of wisdom. And so I would admire people like Hayek, and Solzhenitsyn, and William F. Buckley, and George Will, because I just thought those guys were terrifically smart, and just architects of language. And I thought, I'd like to be like them. But in retrospect, I realized that other virtues, like courage, and loyalty, and the ability to count on someone in a fight, are far more important.
Yes.
Not that wisdom isn't a virtue. It is, but it's a secondary virtue.
Loyalty.
The ultimate virtue is courage, because it is the foundation for all the virtues.
Right.
It's the basis for carrying out
Good.
every virtue. Now, well, one little postscript to that story, and that was, this is now about 2 years ago. I was in my home in the Woodlands here down in the north part of Houston, And the phone rang. It's Trump. And I mentioned this because of the content of this call. He goes, Dinesh, first of all, it's a very Trumpian call. He goes, hey Dinesh, it's... he goes, I'm sitting here with John Kelly. He goes, you know John Kelly, don't you? And I'm like, no. I know he's the chief of staff, but I don't know the guy. And Trump goes, well, turning to your case, he goes, it was evident to me from day one that this case was complete bullshit. The beauty of Trump is that for him, the question of whether to pardon me wasn't a political question. It didn't require a focus group. He didn't consult a team. He didn't ask what the media reaction would be. It was very simply, viscerally, I've seen an injustice. I know it when I see it.
That's right.
I'm in a position to do something about it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be signing your pardon in the morning.
Yeah.
And in this kind of conversation, what is just as important as what is said is what is unsaid. And what was unsaid in the conversation, I never mentioned it, he never mentioned it, but we both knew simultaneously the full import of what he was saying and what he was doing, which was delivering a giant up yours to the Obama administration.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward again to last November, and this is right before impeachment, when my family and I sat down with Trump for the first time. I had actually never met Trump, which says all the more about the pardon. He didn't owe it to me. He didn't know me from Adam. But I got to sit down with him with my family. We had about 45 minutes, just us and Trump and a White House photographer. And weirdly in the conversation, kind of out of nowhere, he goes, Dinesh, he goes, what do you think I should do after the presidency? I'm not taken aback because I kind of looked at him and he kind of laughed as if to say, obviously I mean 2024. But what then? Think ahead. And I said to him, I said, well, Mr. President, I think you should get out of the real estate business and start a network.
Yeah. Yep.
And I
Let's
said,
go.
I'm not talking about cable news. I'm not talking about talk radio on TV. I'm talking about like CBS. A network that has, it's a lifestyle network.
Yeah.
Of course it has news, it has analysis, it has a show equivalent to The View, it has late night comedy, it has its own Jimmy Fallon, it has reality TV, it has movies, it's got the whole gamut.
Heard it here.
And I could see that he stepped back and he was sort of thinking about it. I think he was thinking that this is so different than what he's been doing. But he also has been a creature of popular culture. And he began to say, he said, well, he said, if you look at my social media, my Twitter, my Instagram, my Facebook, he goes, that's about 140 million people.
Right.
And so my point was, you have the name, the brand, you have the money, you have the connections, but most importantly, you already have the audience.
That's right.
The audience. So you are in a position to do it and bring it to life, you may say, instantly. Instantly. Now, the importance of this cannot be understated and is, in fact, I think, something that far outlasts a Trump presidency. It deals with the problem that we, as conservatives, as Republicans, will have no matter what happens in this election.
Right.
Our biggest problem is the media.
Yes.
And our biggest problem isn't the media so much as it is that we don't have a media.
Right.
We don't have a media. Much of what happens that is news in this country is not on the news. And what's on the news isn't news.
Yeah.
So we, as citizens, are afloat in a kind of sea. And we see the smoke and mirrors that has a huge impact on us. Because there's nothing else for us to see. We have to see the world through this lens. But it's not a real mirror. It's a refracting mirror. It transforms images. It shows you what they want you to see. So it is aimed, I would say, not just at misleading you, but at indoctrinating you. And just as important, intimidating you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because the secret appeal of journalism, and I know this because when I graduated from college, I inclined toward journalism. I was admitted to the Harvard Law Business School and the Wharton Business School, and my parents wanted me to go there. And I found myself being attracted to go to Newsweek, go to National Review, go into journalism. But I remember in my conversation with my dad, I was hard-pressed to say why. What was the appeal of it? Which I myself didn't really recognize. And the appeal of it, I realized later, is that the secret appeal of journalism is the power to humiliate. To humiliate other people and to intimidate them, and to intimidate them through the mechanism of information. This is why people go into the field. That's its secret appeal, which they won't admit even to themselves. It's a little bit of a power game. Why does somebody become a meter maid? Think about it for a second. What's the appeal? How much you get paid if you're a meter maid handing out tickets? Why would you want to do that for your life? Why would you? You know why?
Power trip.
Because that person has actually more power over your life than Bill Gates. What power does Bill Gates have over you? Yeah, he can stick Microsoft in a store, but you've got to voluntarily jump in your car and go out there and pay $200 or for an iPhone. It's completely your choice. Bill Gates can't do anything to you. However much money he has, he saw you in the street and he goes, listen, I'll give you $50 if you kiss my feet. Who's going to go for it? So even the pettiest government bureaucrat who has the power to leave a ticket on your car has more power than the CEOs of these big corporations, because they know that when you see that ticket, whoever you are, it'll make you uncomfortable. Your Adam's apple will move up and down your throat. You're like, yikes. And that's power. That's power over people. And it's power over people you don't even know. Now, the point I want to make is that today, we have seen this kind of gangsterization of institutions. We've seen it with the deep state. And again, with all these things, it's taken a while for us to grasp the full enormity of what we're seeing. For a while there, it looked like you've got these rogue officials. Peter Strzok, Page, Clapper, Comey, Brennan. And frankly, if it wasn't for Trump's election, we would know about none of them.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the only reason we know.
Yeah.
And on top of that, Trump didn't control his own Justice Department for 3 years. So all we know is very little compared to what we ought to know. But we already know enough to know that the probable instigator of this whole thing was Hillary.
Yeah.
And the chief coordinator of it, big surprise, Barack Obama. Obama gave the order. into what that means. In American history, to my knowledge, for the first time, a sitting president seeks to entrap, surveil, and oust his legitimately elected successor.
Yeah.
That's what Obama attempted to do. Now, the deeper question is, what made Obama think that he could get away with it?
Right.
Okay. Pelosi. No.
Arrogant.
Wrong. The media. Wrong. No. The courts. No. The deep state. No. The truth of it is, the reason Obama knew he could get away with it is he was convinced that we are the party of the nice guys.
Yeah.
That we, the Republicans, the Patriots, the Conservatives, the Christians,
Yeah.
are the party of the namby-pambies.
That's right. That's right.
That we can be counted
Preach,
on
brother.
to produce inaction. That letting them get away with it is our political specialty.
Yeah.
And moreover, that the entire politics of the left, at least in recent years, is based on this. It may seem odd that in the talk here tonight I haven't yet gotten into the election, and I promise you I'm going to. But I'm sort of setting it up. And I'm setting it up by laying the larger context that our affability, our good-naturedness, our pining for a Reaganite, kinder, gentler America, our yearning for civility, in which we see an Antifa guy break a window, and we rush off to write a strongly worded op-ed for National Review Online of the need for civility. This is what convinces the Antifa guy to break every window in the neighborhood, because nobody has grabbed him by the lapels and slammed him up against the wall, and he's looking at 2 years in prison. Which, if that happened, if somebody did do that, then all these pudgy-faced, overweight kids would go right back to mom's basement. None of them want to be locked up. None of them can even fight.
No.
I mean, if you just look at this sorry group of characters, this is not really an army.
No.
This is the spoiled brats brigade that has been indulged by their parents,
Yeah.
but is now being indulged by our society.
Yeah.
Participation trophy.
Now, in the past, the left recognized that one deadly weapon to use against conservatives is our own morality. So let's take, for example, Stormy Daniels. Stormy Daniels. I mentioned this because Stormy Daniels, I suppose, is some sort of a pervert. But not from the point of view of the left. They don't think she's a pervert. They're a lot more perverted than she is. They don't have any problem with Stormy Daniels. But here's the key. They know that we do. They know that in the Christian churches of America, Stormy Daniels is a problem. And so their political strategy comes out of that. And it is breathtakingly simple and audaciously brilliant. Namely, go up to the Republicans, find the Republican target, whether it's Ted Cruz, Mitch McConnell, Brett Kavanaugh, Donald Trump, and just go, hey guys, here's Stormy Daniels. And then what else do? Nothing. They go home and laugh their heads off. Because they know what's coming. And what's coming is that the Republicans will now produce a circle, pull out long knives, and stab their own guy. They know it. They count on it. This is their strategy. The only person with whom the strategy didn't work, somewhat to their surprise, is Trump. I think you know, it's true, that if the Trump scandals had involved any other Republican in the country, any of the other 17 guys on the podium, they would have quit the race the next day. They would be out. And the left knows it. This is their... So the reason Trump is a mystery to them is because of the following. Hey, Mr. Trump, we got something for you. What do you got? Stormy Daniels. Here's Trump. What else you got? Suddenly, the left is a little bit unnerved because you suddenly got a Republican, and quite honestly, from our side, you have to admit this is a little bit deft. He essentially lowers the moral bar and jumps over it. What else you got? What else you got? So, this is very discombobulating to the other side. And then they realize that, unlike even Reagan was a man of priorities. Reagan would choose, I'm going to deal with the Soviet Union, I'm going to deal with tax cuts. But Reagan never bothered with trivialities. I mean, to Reagan, even departments of the government were trivialities. I mean, Reagan met his own Secretary of Labor, a guy named Sam Pierce. Reagan didn't recognize the guy. He thought he was a big city mayor. Why? Because Sam Pierce was the head of the Department of Housing and Urban Development. To Reagan, that was like a rat hole of public policy. It's like if you go in, you'll never come out. That was Reagan's view. But not Trump. Trump fights on every front. That's his approach.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about Trump is that while he's doing the policy stuff, right, you know, tax reform and trade deals and fixing the court, and at the same time, this is the amazing part, he finds time to like swat Meryl Streep. Boom! Or like Saturday Night Live. Boom! Like failing rating CNN. Boom! So this dude has one foot in the political fight and one foot in the culture war.
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Trump recognizes, in fact, as many Republicans don't, that the political fight is one corner of the battlefield.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
If this was a straight political fight, us against them, we would beat them hands down.
Yep.
But they have academia,
Yeah.
Yep.
and the media,
Yep.
and Hollywood, and Broadway, and the music industry,
Yep.
and pretty much all the comedians. So and that's not even the beginning of what they have. And it's also not the beginning of what they are after, which I'm going to come back to in a minute. Let me pivot for a second to the election and where we are and what's going on. So it seems to me that our predicament now is driven from a very simple fact. We focused on the campaign, and they focused on the election. So looking back on it, their behavior was bizarre. I found it bizarre. First of all, they nominate a ridiculous candidate. It's almost as if they were inviting our taunts. We have gone to an old folks' home and not only pulled out some guy. We've got a guy who, when his wife is speaking, is walking around like he's in a maze.
Oh no.
A preposterous preposterous candidate, chosen in preference to other candidates who would manifestly be more agile, more determined, more well-informed. So it's almost as if they're defying us. You know, it's a little bit like if it's a heavyweight fight and I go, you know, instead of me getting into the ring, I'm going to put in my 6-year-old kid. They do that. And this guy behaves in a preposterous way. It's like, it's 10 a.m., time for my nap.
I know.
I'm calling a lit at noon. I'm having a campaign in which there are 7 people in big circles. 13 reporters. So, they didn't even campaign.
No.
And in retrospect, it's almost as if they knew they didn't need to.
They
Yes,
did.
they knew exactly what they would do.
And you remember also, if we think back to their questioning of Amy Coney Barrett during our hearings, hey, Judge Barrett, would you agree now to recuse yourself
Yeah. Right.
in any cases that might come up in the future involving election interference? Because clearly you can't be objective in such a case. At the time, their weird insistence on this topic to the naive in our group seemed puzzling. Why are you so fanatically obsessed with this? In retrospect, we know why. We were focused on the campaign, so was Trump. Let's go have a rally. Let's bring out the troops. Let's walk the pavements. Let's motivate the base. Let's try to get our message out to Latinos. Let's do this, let's do that. They did none of it. What were they doing? Not nothing. Yeah, right.
Making fake
But how?
ballots.
But how?
Many ways. Modifying the
So,
election results.
they put their energy, they said, why don't we focus on filing lawsuits to enable massive mail-in ballots. Ballots going out like confetti by the millions. 2, the ballot by itself won't do it. Because when the ballot comes back, you can have signature checking. So what about weakening the standards of that signature checking?
Yeah.
Let's avoid having people right next door who could look at the signature the way the bank does between a check and the original to see if the guy who sent the check really wrote the check. How do we avoid that? Well, how about if we organize the room so that the observers are a safe distance away? They can see, but they can't really see. It's kind of you sitting in the bank and trying to see if the teller's doing the right job in matching signatures. You can't see. So the left was focused on organizing that. And then we have this weird phenomenon of the machines themselves.
Yep.
It is now well known that around 2004 in Venezuela, when Hugo Chavez was facing a referendum, in which the polls were running 65% against him, 65 to 35 for his recall, Hugo Chavez declared, find me a machine that can swap the votes and leave no trace of having done so.
That's right.
Erase its own memory so that votes for the opposition can be transferred to me. 3 Venezuelans stepped forward and said, we have such a machine. And it turns out that these are the founders of the sort of network of companies, differently called Smartmatic, Dominion, and to my wife, who's Venezuelan, to her utter disbelief, it is those exact machines that are being used in America and in some of the critical states.
That's right.
Now, let's think of what such a machine would do. Well, the point is not whether the machine swapped this many votes in a particular case, but the fact that the machine can do this makes it a dishonest weighing scale. Imagine if you went into a roulette wheel in which you were told to pick a number out of 100, and then you learned that it's not a normal wheel. There's not an equal chance of getting any number. That the guys on the second floor of the casino can program the wheel, eliminating certain digits. or making sure that some numbers have higher probabilities of occurring than others. That's all you would need to show that this is a rigged machine. I mean, from ancient times, the Bible refers to this about a dozen times, what it calls dishonest weights and measures.
Right.
You go to the market, they produce a scale, but it's not a real scale.
That's
Right.
right.
The scale can be secretly weighted on one side or the other.
That's right.
It can be rigged.
That's right.
Now, if you complain, you don't have to prove that when I bought 4 oranges, the machine was rigged this way. You simply have to say, hand me the scale. Let me show you how it can be rigged. It's a dishonest scale. The merchant is a cheat. Arrest him.
That's right, Dinesh.
Yeah.
So, what we have, I think, is now a multiple vectors of evidence that are very convincing, not just because we lost.
We did not lose.
No,
We
I'm
won.
talking about the count.
Okay. Sorry.
Because we lost in 2008, we lost in 2012 to Obama, we had setbacks in the midterms, but the issue here is the scale of it. There's always been a lot of reports about cheating in absentee balloting, but typically absentee ballots in the past were 3 to 4% of the overall ballots. The real difference, and this is what COVID has opened up. Remember when Jane Fonda said a few weeks ago, COVID is God's gift to the left? It's a little bit of, initially I thought she was talking about the fact that COVID allows Democratic mayors and governors to impose regulations, and maybe that's what she was referring to. But another way to look at it is COVID enabled the gangsterization of the deep state to be now transferred to the one place that many of us still thought was reasonably sacrosanct.
Yeah.
Namely, the official counting of the vote.
Yeah.
Now, the stakes in this could not be higher because the simple truth of it is, if they can rig the vote,
Right.
and if they get away with it,
Yeah.
they will never stop doing it.
Yeah.
It's the same as breaking a window.
Yep.
That's right.
So it is pointless. There are some Republicans, again, on our side. Virtue, which is a very important strength on our side, can also be used as a pretext for cowardice.
Yep.
When virtue becomes things like, well, I'm not going to do anything or say anything about this now. And my real reason is I'm actually a coward.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be called on it, and I don't want to take any heat, and I don't want to make trouble, and I don't want the New York Times calling my house every 5 minutes. But I can't defend it that way. So I make it a point of indignant principle in which I insist that I'm the one who respects the rules and certifies the vote as required by law, and I'm following these procedures even though I know deep down that something really bad has gone on and is going on now.
That's right.
And that the media is in on it.
Yep.
They're in on it in the same way that in my case, one of the most dismaying things for me was to realize that the judge was in on it.
That's right. That's right.
So the prosecutors, because they wanted to try to get the judge to lock me up for years, they provided a list of what they call comparable cases. But the comparable cases weren't comparable. In one case, the guy had done it multiple times. Recidivism. He was a chronic offender. In most of the cases, there was outright corruption. Someone was trying to buy an office or try to get a special tax break for his company. So there was obvious corruption. That's what the campaign finance laws were aimed to catch. In a third case, the amount of money involved was millions of dollars, not $20,000 taken out of my own bank account. It was millions of dollars that were essentially channeled through a whole firm with the aim of the guy giving it getting an ambassadorship. So case after case. So what does the prosecution do? They take all these cases and they just edit out all those details. Right? And so our side, points out the details to the judge and go, listen, this memo that they filed is flat out lies. In every case, they have essentially altered the facts of the case to make it look like this guy got the same penalty when his crime was totally different. It's like giving you 5 years for speeding and showing another case and the guy was speeding in which he killed somebody. But you remove that fact. And then I noticed that the judge was not saying anything about this. And then I realized, of course he knows. And not only does he know,
He's in on it.
but they know he's in on it, and that's why they did it.
That's right.
Anybody who feared that the judge would go, wait a minute, this is legal malpractice. These prosecutors are intentionally lying in a case that could affect a man's life. I need to put them in contempt of court and lock them up. They knew they didn't have to worry about that, because this guy wouldn't even go there. So this is how these guys operate. I mean, what's really funny looking back is this judge, whose name is Berman, this sort of Cornell-educated, Clinton appointee New York guy. He looks at my case and goes, Mr. D'Souza, your case is all hat and no cattle. He was kind of going Texan on me. All hat and no cattle. And I'm thinking, really? I mean, you wouldn't know a cowboy boot if it met you in the ass. All hat and no cattle. Anyway, now, where is all this going with the election? It seems to me that what's really needed is a two-pronged strategy. A legal strategy that just appeals everything up to the Supreme Court. But it may be that the Supreme Court, in this case, will punt. Not because they are left-wingers, but ironically because they're committed to a judicial philosophy that we trumpet on every nomination of deference to the legislature and deference to the Constitution, which in Article 2, Section 1 makes it really clear that the state legislatures determine the procedures by which elections are made and electors are appointed. That language could not be more clear. And if I'm right about this, and I'm not a lawyer, I don't claim to know this for a fact, but if it is a fact,
Second Amendment.
a very remarkable conclusion follows from it. A conclusion that is both exhilarating and perhaps worrisome for our side. Namely, that the Republican state legislatures that are in control, I believe, in every swing state, but if not in virtually every swing state, are on our team. And so the fate of the election is in their hands. And all they have to decide, and the Constitution unequivocally gives them this power, is that we don't think that the normal system of picking electors works in this case because we suspect systematic fraud. They don't have to know that there's systematic fraud. They actually don't have to have any reason whatever. They can decide, we suspect that there's fraud, and therefore we're going to pick the electors this way. And they can prescribe whatever way
But they have to have a
they
backup.
decide to do it. Now, what would stop our own team from scoring a goal
Fear.
that is utterly within their power?
Fear.
Fear, but where does that fear come from? What are they afraid of?
The nice
No.
guy. Losing their
They're
power.
afraid
Losing their power. Exactly.
Nasty grams in the mail, pictures of their kids. Pictures of their grandkids. That's
they're
what's happening.
afraid because the liberals control the culture.
That's right.
And we have to admit that this fact is a great failing on our side.
Yeah.
To have enabled the culture to be so in control of the other side that it would instill fear in our side. And because not everyone is going to be a hero. By and large, I live by sort of, you could call it the 1 in 10 rule. When Henry VIII issued an edict requiring that the Catholic priests of England sign a statement disavowing their loyalty to the Pope and committing their loyalty to the King, only 1 in 10 Catholic priests refused to sign and was executed. The other 9 signed. This to me has always been a very telling window into human nature. We cannot require supernatural heroism on our side because we will never find it in sufficient quantity. We have to make it so it's easier for our side to do the right thing. Now the good news is that there are many ways in which we can protect our own team. There are many ways in which we can show that the threats of the other side are illusory. Now, let's start with a very common threat, the media. Why is the media a big threat? You know why? Because we listen to them.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's the real reason.
Yep.
Their power is in our
true.
mind.
That's right. That's it.
Let's take CNN.
I don't watch much of it.
We are constantly on social media discussing CNN.
Yeah.
Now, on an ordinary day on CNN, the number of people viewing CNN is about 400,000.
That's it.
In prime time, it's like 1.2 million.
Wow.
To give you an idea of how to think about these numbers, currently, as of right now, on Twitter alone, I have 1.9 million followers. On Parler, I have 2.4 million. Over 2 million on Facebook. No. I only mention this, I mean, I'm not saying I'm bigger than CNN, but I guess numerically I am. But what I'm trying to get at is the power of CNN is somewhat illusory. You walk into an airport, oh my God, there's CNN. That must be what happened
It's in your
yesterday.
face.
You go abroad, you check into a hotel, there's CNN. So although CNN has very few viewers, they're very smart about strategically placing themselves to create this illusion that they are this immensely powerful international network. I mean, you see, and this is not even Al-Qaeda, terrorists who hijack a plane in Somalia, they go, we want CNN, we want CNN. They think that CNN matters. They don't realize no one's watching. But the illusion is powerful, that's my point.
True.
So part of what we need to think about is how do we reduce this power that is a hold on us, and long term we can't win without becoming more competitive in these key institutions. Now, let me turn to how am I doing on time here?
Take your time. Take your time.
Okay.
Keep going, Dinesh.
I appreciate it. Let me turn to what I think the left's real goal is here. Not just with the election, in general. What do they want? When we think of socialism, we often think, well, they want our money. They want economic confiscation. And actually, if you read Marx, you do get the idea that socialism is all about that. But I think it's very obvious to us if you look at the culture now, and things can only get worse if they're in charge, is that their goal goes far beyond economic confiscation.
That's right.
Their goal is really simple. It's to create their own culture and force us to live in it.
That's right. That's right.
So, and their idea of culture here is totalitarian in almost the literal meaning of the term. Totalitarian in the literal meaning of the term means total. It covers everything. And look at the appetite of the left. You think, okay, listen, they got academia, they got the media, they got Hollywood. They should be content. I would be content if I had all that. But no, they want the NFL. They want a bunch of guys who run with the ball. They want the Boy Scouts. They want to go browbeat the Christian baker in Colorado and make him bake a cake.
Yeah.
Even if he doesn't want to. Make him say things he doesn't believe.
Yeah.
Force him. And the point of the attack on him is not him. It's to send a message to everyone else.
Right.
Don't you dare, or we'll destroy your life.
Right.
So, what is our long-term solution to this problem? I want to sort of think it through to the end, because it's not just about winning the election, it's not just about starting a channel.
Nope.
It seems to me that our long-term goal is really simple. If we do not want to live in their culture, and remember what living in their culture means. It means that they will indoctrinate our children. They will pervert our values. They will undermine our patriotism, and they will make us pay for it. By sending our kids off to college, we will subsidize the undermining of our own values. And those of us who don't go along, they will try to force. Now, what does it mean to say no to this operation?
To stand up and fight.
Yes, but how? And toward what end?
Yep.
What is our goal? It seems to me our goal is
Expanding
this.
our community.
Our goal is really simple. And that is long term, we have to exit their culture.
That's right. Yes.
Good.
Now, what that means is we have to create our own. And that means
Network.
we have to create our own schools. And we have to figure out educational delivery systems in which we can deliver, maybe online, a world-class education for a fraction of the cost of what it costs now. And we have to create our own media, and we have to create our own movies, and we have to have our own comedians. So this is not merely a matter of being tough. It requires resources and creativity and commitment to a clear goal. But the clear goal is that we are going to create our own America, our own culture, live in it, and then defend it and guard it. What saying no means is rejecting their intimidation. But that is of no use if we don't have a place to go. So if theirs is the only media we have, it's not as if we're going to sit at home in the dark and not consume media. It simply means that we have to have our own media. Now the beauty of all this is that we are living at a time when all this can be done. And not only can it be done, there's a tremendous opportunity. Part of my point to Trump was this. If you have one network, let's just for a moment call it the Trump network. You have half the country straight out.
Right.
And everybody else fights over the other half. So, what could be a bigger business opportunity than that? We were reluctant because of our temperament. And again, I'm not one of these people who derides traditional Republicans, because I think that we need an alliance of Trumpsters and traditional Republicans to get this done. A lot of things that traditional Republicans provide, we actually need on our team. We need elites. We just need elites to defend our values.
Right.
We need good lawyers. We need good scholars. We need people who can deliver the goods, but that are on our side. The what we have to educate our side to is that there's no point living in an America that doesn't exist anymore.
That's right.
It's wishful thinking.
Yes.
And it's ultimately pernicious for you. So for example, you'll have Republicans, well-meaning Republicans, say things like, well, of course, we have our national anthem. Actually, we don't. We don't really have a national anthem anymore because a lot of people on the other side don't want it.
Right.
They refuse to sing it. What are we going to do, force them? So the truth of it is,
Yes.
if it is, look, if it's little Tommy in your own house, you make him. Right? But what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to the American flag, the Pledge of Allegiance, the Washington Monument, the somewhat alarming truth is that these are now our monuments, our flag, our anthem, but not their anthem. By choice. So it isn't, again, we don't share the same goals and only disagree on means. The America we like is the America they want to undo.
That's right.
The history we like is the history that they are trying to pull out of the textbooks.
That's right. Already have.
So essentially what we call up, they call down.
That's right.
What we call front, they call back. They're trying to produce this topsy-turvy America, this upside-down society.
Yeah.
And either we will relent to it. We have this scene, I'll sort of close on this and then sum up. We create a scene in Trump Card from Orwell's 1984. To me, it's the most telling scene where Winston, the protagonist, is under the hold of Big Brother, the state. And the state, which is here in our case the left, is trying to get Winston to say that 2 + 2 is 5.
Right.
And Winston goes, I'm not doing it. He goes, you can take me captive, you can take away my family, you can lock me up in a room, do whatever you want, but for me, the only freedom left, and the freedom I'm going to hang on to, is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 is 4. And they go, okay, Winston. And they put him in a room, they turn out the lights, and then they sensory deprivation of food, he's scared of rats, so they put rats on his face. And finally, the poor guy breaks down, and he goes, okay, I admit it, 2 + 2 is 5. Can I go now?
No.
And then Big Brother goes, no, Winston, we're not satisfied. Why? Because in your mind, you still think it's 4. You're only saying 5 because you want the pain to stop. That's what we want to hear. We are not satisfied with outward conformity. We want to win your inner submission.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So in the end, they don't just want you to conform, they want to destroy your soul.
That's right.
They want to make you give in.
That's right.
And that's why they put so much emphasis on the indoctrination.
That's right.
And they want to start it young, because they want to win you over without having to beat you down. Remember Milton, who conquers by force had conquered only half his foe. If they can get willing submission, that's better. But we, thank God for us, are not willing to give it.
No.
We're not doing it.
That's right.
Why? Because in the end, it's not ultimately even about us, I don't think. Because in the end, and this is true for me and I'm sure it's true for you, the lived experience of America, which is to say the taste of freedom, is in the end something very exhilarating. Because it ties into something that is very much part of what it means to be human. Many people in the world don't know it. They don't know it in its full sense of the term. In most countries in the world, your destiny is to an amazing degree given to you. And I'm not talking about totalitarian countries. I mean, I grew up in India, a democratic society. But the truth of it is, if I were to look at my life at the age of 5, I could have plotted it on a graph that would look very similar to my dad's life and his dad before him. It was affected by whether I was a boy or a girl, and the first child or the second child in the family. A lot of those things would immediately plot the dots on my Cartesian graph. And that would be my given life. But the idea that somehow I could take a life and make it more like a blank sheet of paper where I am the artist, that's
Welcome
America.
to America.
Yeah.
That's where we live. And so my closing message to you is that we have to fight, but we also have to fight creatively. We have to fight for the long term. We have to bring along the stragglers on our own side.
Yep.
Don't strafe your own team. This is actually something that Trump could learn.
That's good, yes.
Because strafe your enemies, but if you strafe your own team, they will sit around and sulk and look for a chance to knife you in the back.
Yep.
Don't do that. Build up your team. Try to win over members from the other team. And then build up the institutions that we need so that the next time it's not so hard on our guys. They have places to go. If we have a young 18-year-old who's really funny, he needs an improv where he can go practice if he wants to become a stand-up comedian. And right now, we don't have one for him. And if you want to make a feature film right now, it's really hard if you're a conservative. Not just because Hollywood is intolerant, but because it takes a lot of diverse skills to make a movie. See, if you're Michael Moore, you go to Hollywood, you go, I want to make a movie. And they go, here's $10 million. Michael Moore makes the movie, and then everything is done for him. Hey, Michael Moore, on Monday, you're going to be on Oprah. On Tuesday, you're on The View. On Wednesday, you're at Jimmy Fallon's. On Thursday, so the marketing of the movie is done for him. This guy needs only one talent to make a movie. You try this on our side. First of all, you need investors. You need to go get the $10 million. And that requires business plans and legal work. You need to do all that. Then you have to make the movie. And after you've made the movie, you'll get no publicity on it except the publicity you generate yourself. So you have to now go out and market the movie. Now, if you think about that, people who can do one of those things generally are not good at the other. If you're really good at finance, you can generate the money, but you don't know what a movie is like. If you're very creative and you can make a fantastic movie, generally you have no idea how to get the money. And even if you can do both, you don't have the reach to do the marketing. So you need this ensemble of things to put together. So what I'm saying is, on our side, it's much more difficult than it is on their side. And our long-term goal should be to make it a little easier for our team. Otherwise, they're always sort of riding the bicycle uphill. So to me, that's where our challenge lies. It's daunting in a way, but I'm always struck by the creativity and inventiveness of our side. It's there. The resources are there. So just knowing what we need to do, planning it out, committing to it, and doing it, that's the way we move our team forward. That's the way we save America. That's the way we move closer to that goal that Reagan so evocatively mentioned in his, I believe, 1984 campaign, a phrase that continues to inspire me to this day. The very idea of what Reagan called morning in America. Thank you very much.